All right, let's do it. Wearing my awesome, cool New Jersey cap. I know I'm not from Georgia, but it's all good. Probably could have realized that. Simplifying radicals. Simplifying radicals is a really big deal. It's the first step in kind of understanding how radicals work within the system of this first unit. So let's just kind of break it down a little bit by definitions first. A radical is the square root symbol with any number underneath. So very, very easily, that's a square root and that's a number. Now, that's irrational if you remember from the last video, but that's a radical and that's a number underneath it. So we can say this a couple of different ways. Radical 3, I prefer root 3. Okay, root and then whatever numbers under there, that's the best way to identify these types of things. Good. Now, when it's a number that's under here that has many different factors, we need to simplify that. Okay, so for instance, we know what the square root of 81 is. The square root of 81 gives me an integer, and that means it is 9. If you, on a test or quiz, leave the square root of 81 as it is like that, it's not correct. This is the correct interpretation of that number. So we just simplified that number from this to that. Okay? Another example for you, the square root of 9. Don't leave the square root of 9 anywhere that's on homework, quizzes, tests, classwork, blah, blah, blah. That can be simplified, and it's this. Now, the question is when we get to things like this, the square root of 8. Now, we know that it's irrational. But when I want to simplify a radical, it does not mean I'm trying to get the decimal form of that. It means I'm trying to just make this more simply a smaller radical. Okay, so I know that might be a little bit challenging, but we're going to do tons of numbers and tons of problems like this in class. Okay, so what do we do to find, or how do we find the simplification for this number? Well, here's what I do. I need to find a factor of that number that's a perfect square. That's the easiest way to do this, okay? Because you know that a perfect square has a number that is just simplified, because the square root of 9 is 3, because that's perfect square. The square root of 81 is 9, because that's perfect square, okay? So what we're going to do here is we need to list out some factors of 8. So let's just do that now. Factors of 8. So what numbers can I multiply together to get 8? I can do 8 and 1, right? Neither of those are perfect squares. However, the other set of factors are 2 and 4. Well, 4 is a perfect square. I found what I'm looking for. Now, what I like to do, and at first you guys can do this too, it's like a factor tree, hopefully you've done it before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a couple of arrows because there's 2 factors to make the product of 8, right? So what this breaks down to is the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Yeah, you can. Now, but I know what the square root of 4 is. That's just 2. So what I'm doing here is 2 times the square root of 2. The factors of 2 are 1 and 2. I can't break that down any further. So what I'm left with here is 2 root 2, which means my answer is 2 root 2. And I just kind of push those together. I don't have to put the multiplication sign here. I can just leave it as that. All right? So that's the simplified form. If you are on a quiz or test to put this in your calculator and give me the decimal form, that is not simplifying. This is. If I want the decimal form, I will ask for it. Okay? We'll do a couple of examples and then we'll roll on to the next topic on the next video. Bam. Okay. 5 examples for you. You can go ahead and try these on your own. Remember, you have a pause button somewhere over here. So pause it, stop me, forward me, whatever you got to do. It's fine. We'll do a couple of them together. In fact, we'll probably do all of them together. Let's go with the square root of 75. Now, I know some of the bigger numbers may be more challenging, but remember from the last slide what we're looking for. Perfect squares. I know 25 is a perfect square that fits in there nicely, isn't it? So if I can break this down, I've got the square root of 25 times the square root of 3, because 25 times 3 gives me 75. Forgot the arrow, sorry. Now I know what this is. This happens to be 5. I can't break this down anymore. So this is going to be 5 times the square root of 3, which simply gives me 5 root 3. The simplified version of the root 75 here is 5 root 3. Done. Okay? Let's move on. The square root of 49. Don't lose your minds. I know some of you are going to. Every year I do this, people lose their minds a little bit. They say, Mr. D, I don't understand. The square root of 49 is already a perfect square. Because it's already a perfect square, we know the answer to it. It's 7. Ha! Tricked you. Thought you were going to do that the whole time. Nope. Square root of 50. Bam. I'm writing it again. I don't know why. Probably because I'm a little crazy. I'm looking for perfect squares to pull out for factors. Well, 50 is kind of like 75. 25 goes into it. 25 times square root of 2. I know what that is. It's 5. So the answer is 5 root 2. Done. Okay? Keep erasing. Kind of annoying. I wish it erased for me. That'd be really cool. Square root of 8. We just did it on the other slide, so I'm going to leave that. Square root of 20. I'm going to put it up here. Okay. Square root of 20. Okay. I want a perfect square factor. So list out the factors if you don't know for sure. Because I've done this one like 4 billion times before, I know that I'm looking for the factors of 5 and 4, because 5 times 4 is 20, but I know what that is. So this is the square root of 5 times 2. Why do you think I did this the opposite way from the other ones I did? That's right, because I wanted to kind of change things around you. The number that you pull out of the perfect square kind of leapfrogs that radical and goes into the front. So we're going to have 2 root 5. Hey, if you wrote root 5, 2, as long as you had the multiplication sign in there, it's not really wrong, but it's just a little bit weird looking. So you want to go ahead and do that. Now, really quick, what if you couldn't find the perfect square factor? Well, that's fine, because you can still find how to get down to the end of this. Now, let's try this one, for instance. Let's go back to the square root of 50. Okay. Now, we knew that that was 5 root 2. Okay. Now, what if I was like, oh, I blanked out, I don't know, that's 25, and I did the factors of the root 10 times root 5, right? Because 10 and 5 are factors of 50. Well, then you would get to this point. I can't break that down anymore. And this would go down to 5 and 2, but then I have a 5 again. So let's do that. This is just going to be a little bit longer either way. So root 5 times root 2 times root 5 again, because this comes down. Well, I'm stuck, right? Or are you? You can kind of work around that and see what 2 numbers you can multiply together to get back to something that we had before. I see a 5 and a 5. So I'm going to multiply those together and get root 25 times root 2. This breaks down to 5 again. And look, we went a whole different way, but we still got the same answer. So there you go. Okay. Done.